it's not your job to help someone have zero pain. The expectation is not that workouts feel like a day at the spa and
Hmm.
that pain is something that we can completely eliminate. That's not realistic. Instead, what's really important is if I have pain or discomfort, how do I modify or adapt or find a workaround so that I
Right.
can still move and participate and make progress without making my pain worse, right?
All right, everyone. Welcome back to another great episode of Let's Move Canada. I am your host, Luigi. And on today's episode, we're thrilled to be joined by fitness educator, movement mentor, and director of education at the Pain Free Performance Specialist Certification, Logan Dube, here to tell us about their journey from elite sport to empowering others to move pain free. Should be really interesting. But before we get into this and introduce Logan fairly, I want to mention that this podcast is brought to you by Let's Move Canada, whose mission is to make Canada the fittest nation on earth by 2030. Our podcast aims to raise awareness about the importance of both physical and mental health and to spotlight the people and ideas making movement more exciting and accessible for everyone. And today's guest is no different. Today's guest is someone who truly lives and breathes movement in the gym, in the classroom, and in the community. Now, Logan Dube is a former elite soccer player and now serves as the director of education for the Pain Free Performance Specialist certification, helping coaches and trainers deliver smarter, safer, and more inclusive movement. With over 20 years of experience in personal training, mentorship, and fitness education, Logan brings a unique and powerful perspective to how we move and why it matters. Logan, we're so excited to have you here with us today. Thank you so much and welcome.
Thanks, Luigi. This is a very great way to kick off my Friday, so I appreciate the invitation.
Oh, I love this. I love this already. Well, to actually kind of ease into everything, let's start with the very beginning. What was your childhood like when it comes to when it came to physical activity and movement? And were you a part of a family that moved a lot?
Ah, that's such a great place to start. I think I have a little bit of a unique take on that because my own understanding of my childhood kind of changed at a certain point. Um,
Okay.
and so I kind of have to tell the story from, hey, now here's what I know, right? And that's kind of interesting to me, anyways. But the way it kind of goes is at a very, very young age, like months old. I was dealing with something I now know was juvenile rheumatoid arthritis. What my
Ah.
parents experienced was I just didn't walk for way longer than whatever that normal development is.
Mhm.
So I don't remember it, but the way they tell the story is like I was two and I wasn't walking yet. Um,
Okay.
and so they took me to doctors and specialists and all kinds of people to try to figure out what was happening. And it took a very long time. And in fact, what they ended up sort of deciding was like a nameless situation. I got put into some small group studies. I have very vague memories of being woken up in the middle of the night to take a
Mhm.
giant pill inside of a spoonful of jelly or ice cream or whatever. And so as a kid, as a really young kid, I think I was sort of dealing with these challenges, but I lacked the understanding or the language or sort of even the frame of reference that that was different.
Okay.
And so, when I was a kid, I played soccer, but I was the goalie. And when I went into track, I kind of did high jump instead of running. And I remember doing like an 800 meters at like a house games because there was no one else to do it. And I was like, I'll do it. And then I was in pain for like 3 days after.
Oh my God.
So I have kind of this interesting, almost lack of memory, lack of impression of that. And I was maybe, I want to say in high school when I sort of understood a little bit more about what all that was. I was like, why do I go to this arthritis clinic with a bunch of old people every 6 months?
Right.
How do I have these weird insoles in my shoes and none of my friends do? And it's the way I sort of look at it is I was a pretty good athlete. I was playing sports. I was doing stuff. So why was there this sort of weird, thing going on? And it took me, I think, that long to kind of go like, oh, that was like a thing. That was a challenge. And I really credit my parents. Whether I mean my dad was super active. He was in the army and he played tennis and he would run and he was one of the people who led recruits through the obstacle course. He was super physical. I wouldn't say my mom was super active back then. I remember her going, to aerobics fitness classes in the 80s and walking with her friend and her dog a lot. She strength trains now, but that's because I forced her to later in life, right? But I would say the sort of influence they had on me in the movement space was they didn't tell me something was wrong. They probably heard juvenile rheumatoid arthritis and just
Right.
didn't bother to tell me about it. They didn't stick a label on me that maybe made me think, oh, well, I can't move because there's something wrong with me or it might hurt or whatever. I remember having good days and I played sports and I had not great days and I read a book. And so it took me a really long time to kind of sort of understand, oh, this whole time I've had this thing with a name that means something. But I'm a borderline, I'm on my way to being a pro athlete. I play lots of different sports.
Wow.
I have a certain amount of confidence in my body. And I wonder if I would have ended up there if I'd been given that label and if I'd been made to understand at a young age, oh, well, you shouldn't do that, right?
Wow.
I think that's kind of interesting. It's sort of informed. I'm sure we'll get into it, but I think it's
Uh-huh.
a lot of what I believe about what pain-free even means.
Right. No, I think that's a good point. I mean, as I even introduced you and said the word pain free, I wondered a lot what that means. And now, as you're talking, I'm already jumping to conclusions, but I'm holding myself like, okay, we'll get to it when we get to it. But I love the message that, or at least the thought that had you've been given that label, who knows how far you would have actually made it, maybe further, maybe the same, maybe less, right? But
Hmm.
I find that fascinating. That's actually very interesting. And do you have those conversations with your parents a lot about how, like, do you reflect about this with them?
I think I've had that conversation with my mom. I've certainly written about it, and then she's read a blog post or she's listened to a podcast or something, and then she always sends me a really sweet message after. Because essentially, I'm trying to give my parents a lot of credit in the
Yeah.
sense that they made movement accessible to me, and maybe they were carrying some fear or some knowledge that they sort of chose to save me from or protect me from, right? They sort of let me make my own way. I know I played soccer, not basketball, because the idea of running on the hardwood floor was maybe less ideal for my joints.
Right.
So I grew up in British Columbia. We have the benefit of being able to play sports outside pretty much all year round. And a lot of the time, the ground is kind of mushy, which is nice for
Right.
joints, right?
Yeah.
I know I did tap and not ballet for the same reason. It was considered to be maybe a better choice for my joints. So I think my parents were really smart. They made some decisions based on kind of the information they had, the recommendations maybe that the doctors and the physiotherapists were making for me. But all I really noticed, all I felt was all of these things are available to me. If you want to do it, go. If you
Mhm.
like it, do more. If you really like something, we'll pay for extra training. So I think that's really powerful. When you talk about making sport or activity more accessible, more inclusive, that's what my experience of that is. I did not perceive any barriers. And yet, arguably, pain for a
Uh-huh.
lot of people is probably a huge barrier. It's one of
Yeah.
probably the biggest reasons people don't move and exercise. So I think I'm lucky to have sort of a really unique experience with accessibility, pain, movement, and sort of what it means to navigate all of that with maybe the most success. I wouldn't say that's felt like a hugely limiting factor for me. So that's been pretty awesome.
I think that's wonderful. That's really awesome. And big shout out to mom and dad from over here. And so that sounds
100%.
really awesome. And we're talking about how accessible all of that has been for you. What did the journey look like throughout school into early adulthood when it came to sport? So, in other words, what did sport mean to you throughout the years? How did that evolve for you?
Yeah, I mean, I will admit I don't have kids, so I don't know what it looks like for kids nowadays. But
Hmm.
I am really grateful that I had recess every day in elementary school. We took the second half of our lunch break. We went outside and we played on the playground. I had a teacher in grade 4 who, if we kind of got done our stuff early, he'd take us out for the last half hour and we'd play frisbee. And I had playgrounds and soccer fields and baseball diamonds and just access to movement and sports space all around me. The rec center was a 2-minute walk from my house. My high school was a 3-minute walk from my house. My elementary school was a 4-minute walk from my house. So I grew up in a neighborhood where pretty much every kid played some kind of sport. The majority of those outside, right? Like I know hockey's big in Canada, but that's more expensive, more equipment, indoors, arenas, ice times, whatever. I kind of was able to go out and do anything, anytime. And it was sort of just a really normal part of my upbringing. So
Hmm.
when we look at kids now who maybe get put into sports and they specialize at a young age, we, maybe have concerns about what that means to physical development. I played every sport for a lot of years before I specialized. And even when I specialized, I was still like, I took PE all the way through high school and we did windsurfing and curling and golfing and, like
Hmm.
I had a really wide array of
Yeah.
experiences that I think has served me really, really well. Because training is one thing and movement is another thing. And training falls under the category of movement, but there's so much more movement than just go to the gym, do your workout, right?
Yeah.
There's so many physical hobbies. Canada is a phenomenal country to be able to get out and do things and learn things and have physical hobbies. So I do think it's huge to be able to experience that throughout my lifespan, right? So when you say what's the journey, well, I kind of said yes to everything. And I was in some shape or form, I was on the track team even though I didn't run long distance. I took PE even though I didn't
Oh,
there were certain things I did. So there was always options around move. And I think that's sort of been a through line for me. I feel better on a day where I get movement in. I like to travel and sort of experience what some of those movement activities are in other countries and other cultures. It's just there's so much cool stuff to explore and experiment with. I feel lucky to have sort of been given that bug of curiosity at a young age.
I think that's really cool.
Totally. Then at some point, how I ended up sort of steering into soccer more directly is I think I was about 12. The director or the sort of head coach person or the person that oversaw head coaches in my soccer club had been a goalie. So he kind of had an eye for maybe what it takes to play that position. So I think I was about 12. He approached my parents and said, Logan might be someone who could do really well here. There's some development opportunities. Here's what it, might look like to get involved. And so I was really lucky to not just be identified, but be coached by someone who knew what the position was.
Hmm.
So I think, in my mid-teens, I was doing a goalie practice on Sunday night. I was practicing with my team and playing games with my team. I was also practicing with the boys team that this individual coached. I also got brought up to train with the women's teams. And then I was playing on permits with the women's teams. And then I was also playing with my high school team. And then I was also playing on the provincial team. So there were a number of years, pretty much when I was in high school, where I was training and or playing on sort of minimum 3, maximum 5 teams at a time. And that
Wow.
was probably multiple hours a day, every day on the soccer field. So we talk about getting your 10,000 hours in. I was really lucky to be able to do that. And I got good just kind of because I was doing it all the time. And I had someone who
Yeah.
knew what goalies needed and gave me that training. So it was sort of a function of I loved it. I was given a lot of support. There were a lot of opportunities to practice. That sent me down the route of getting a scholarship. So I went to play soccer in Michigan. I got a university scholarship to do that. Um,
Mhm.
and then I decided I really liked it. I wanted to see how far I could go. I sort of looked at the opportunity to play soccer professionally. And then that's where the idea of accessibility kind of comes back around, right? We had the US Olympic women's team make a big splash with, some World Cup and Olympic wins. Um,
Mhm.
and so they would start a pro league and then it would sort of die down and then they'd do well at the World Cup again and then they'd try again, right? So there was sort of this undulating situation happening with soccer being a possible professional thing for women. I kind of came out of university at the bottom of a downturn. So I went to the UK. I tried out for the Liverpool Football Club. They wanted me to stay, they wanted me to play. But being a professional athlete at that moment in time meant I was probably going to have to work part time at a fish and chip shop and stay in a flat with 5 other girls. And we were going to have to arrange our own transportation to games. But,
Wow.
but hey, you're a professional soccer player, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
And so it was really interesting to go, well, I was just in the US for 4 years on a full ride scholarship to a private university. They probably spent close to $1 million on me in 4 years. And I don't think I'm being a snob about it. I think I'm just being practical, saying this is what Div 1 looked like in the NCAA. in the
Uh-huh.
US in the early 2000s. And this is what women's professional soccer looked like in the UK, like the year after that. And it's not that I didn't want to play. I was very happy I went. I was very happy to get the offer, but I was like, if this is it, I might have to figure out what to do with the rest of my life. I could stay. I could play. I could spend my own money to be here for a couple of years being a pro athlete. At some point I'll go broke. At some point I'll have to come home.
Yeah,
What am I going to do, right?
right,
And so I think I kind of just looked at the opportunities at that time and went, oh, I don't know. I ended on such a high in my university career. I might just have to move on now. So I opted not to stay in the UK. I came home to Canada and sort of had to figure out what to do next. So it's interesting to go from like, man, I had every opportunity to do this thing I loved, and then all of a sudden, there really wasn't a way for that to be a smart decision. Uh,
right, right.
and then, it's been really cool to see, like I bought tickets to the inaugural season of the NSL this year in Canada, Go Vancouver Rise, right? So like however many years later, we're sort of looking at our first professional league in Canada now, which is amazing. And the interest and the support and the investment in that is amazing. Listen, I have no hard feelings. I have no chip on my shoulder about it. I loved playing soccer. I've also loved my life every day since I stopped playing. But it does kind of speak to, I think, a lot of the issues that you guys talk about, which is like there has to be some opportunity, there has to be some effort, there has to be some, platform or space for the thing to happen. And I think I would have loved to play for Canada. I would have loved to play internationally. I would have loved to keep playing. And it's also okay. I think the decision I made at that time was just a reflection of the reality of a
Right.
limited opportunity. But it's kind of cool to see that things have started to change. We're making some big improvements in how continuing on as a high level athlete is actually now a very real possibility, and doing it at home is amazing. So it's kind of cool to see that whole journey.
No, totally, and it is quite the journey. That sounds like it's so. I have so many follow up questions because I'm thinking, we talked about how you would when you were younger you would train for a day really hard, followed by 3 days of pain. I'm so curious to know how you manage that as a professional athlete, as an elite soccer player. Like, how did you manage that?
Yeah, so I guess to be fair, when I was growing,
Uh huh.
which is every year, I'm 6 feet tall, so I had to grow a lot as a teenager. I think that was challenging because that puts stress on the body, right? The
Totally.
bones are changing shape and the muscles are trying to keep up and all that. So I do think that my experience was kind of growing up normally has some aches and pains, and then I had sort of this inherent joint weakness on top to
Mhm.
deal with. But again, the idea of my parents kind of going like, hey, if it feels good, do it. If you like it, do it. If it doesn't feel good, you don't have to. I think I was able to find stuff that worked, right? Being a goalie worked. Running a ton
Mhm.
didn't work. So I
Makes
wasn't going to be
sense.
a forward or a midfielder. But being a goalie was great. High jump was great. I wasn't going to run, 1,500 meters. I wasn't going to sprint, whatever. So I think what was great was I was actually able to find a lot of activities that I liked, that I was good at, that did not cause me pain. Because I don't even think I have the fortitude to show up if every day felt like my worst day. I for sure would have not. I
Yeah.
would have just, played music or read more books or whatever. And so that kind of, I think what's cool about that for what my job is now is this. Pain is a normal part of the human experience.
Hmm.
We will all have more, less, a lot, a little bit, predictable, unpredictable, controllable, uncontrollable, right? We're all going to have experiences with pain. What's important to me in how I serve trainers now and how I lead education now is it's not your job to help someone have zero pain. The expectation is not that workouts feel like a day at the spa and
Hmm.
that pain is something that we can completely eliminate. That's not realistic. Instead, what's really important is if I have pain or discomfort, how do I modify or adapt or find a workaround so that I
Right.
can still move and participate and make progress without making my pain worse, right? So like on the worst days, how can I prevent the pain from getting worse? How do I prevent aggravating it? On medium days, how do I push a little bit so that I can make progress? On days where I feel great, what's available to me to like go full out, full send? And so it's sort of like the more you learn about what works for you, the more options you have for what you can do on any given day, the more hopeful you are, the more the more you know you can do something. And that's hugely important. Pain creates hopelessness,
Right.
and having hope is really important to participation. So, I think I was just able to find stuff I could do that did not cause me mm, more than a normal amount of discomfort, right? Like you work out, you're a little sore the next day. You go to soccer practice, you jump and dive and roll 100 times, you're going to have a few bruises, but that's all very normal. So what was important for me was finding stuff I could do and be good at and get better at and compete in, that didn't like break me down more, right? I was able to be really successful because I found stuff I could do that worked for me, that worked with me. I think that was pretty key.
No, for sure. And it sounds like you have learned a lot, and you've already just mentioned that you've just mentioned that when you talk to your coaches, you're even passing some of that along. What would you say is one principle you always kind of just pass on? I mean, maybe the one you shared is the one that you always pass on, but there must be there must be many things that you tell to your coach. What is the one principle that you find is the most consistent one that you pass along? And kind of just go into telling us a little bit about your platform, like what you've created, and tell us more about it.
Sure, yeah. So, I mean, the kind of the backstory is I was a personal trainer for a long time. I moved around in Canada. I worked for a couple different companies. I found a home when I returned to BC. I found a home with a company. I started out as a trainer. I became a manager. Right. I kind of went up the chain. At a certain point, what was really cool about that company was they did a lot of internal education. So
Mm-hmm.
trainers were able to get access to phenomenal education and courses, all within the context of that company. I took full advantage of that. I thought it was awesome. I mean, I'm 15 years in as a trainer, and I'm still going to every course I can because I find it really interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And then there came an opportunity for me to step into a role inside of that company as a part-time educator while I was still managing clubs. And then that became an opportunity to lead education in that company, which was really awesome. And then that got me in contact with other educators, right? So at a certain point, I was super well insulated in that company. And then I got to a level where I started to look out and see, well, what else is happening in this space? What are people saying? What are the courses being offered? And that's how I got into connection with Dr. John Russin, who's the creator of the Pain Free Performance Specialist certification. And between meeting him and how COVID landed and whatever, we started kind of working together because both of us did the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then at a certain point, it made a lot of sense for me to do what I was doing with him instead of side by side. So I've been working for him full time now for I guess 3 years, just over 3 years. What I think really drew me to what PPSC is all about, we were teaching the same stuff, right? The mechanics and sort of the details were the same. But what I really liked about PPSC was it was structured and organized in a way that I thought made it really accessible, right? There's knowing stuff, and then there's having what you know be organized well enough that you can use it like that, like
Mm-hmm.
in real time, in a live session. When someone goes, oh, this doesn't feel good for my knee. I know stuff, but can I use what I know and keep the session moving? Can I make the person feel successful moving through or modifying around whatever pops up on any given day? And so, to say what's my philosophy, it's really it's one of John's main tenets, which is why I love what we do over there so much. And it's this: we are really all about, first and foremost, empowering our clients, right? The science and the physical solutions and the way we do sets and reps and exercise setups and assessments and all that stuff. All of that is super important. There's a lot of science inside of exercise.
Mm-hmm.
But what's way, way, way more important than that, especially if we're working with someone with pain, is the ability to connect and the ability to say, have the tools to deal with and address their pain inside of our scope of practice, right? I'm not talking about being a doctor or a physical therapist. I'm talking about
Mm-hmm.
being a trainer. The ability to connect, have some tools, have some strategies, but ultimately never forget that what this person actually needs is they need to be met where they're at.
Yep.
what they're capable and able and willing to do is probably way more important than what we want them to do, right? Well, the
Right.
science says this is what you should do. Yeah, but what are you willing to do? Where are you willing to start? Sort of what's the emotional resonance of choosing to move, right? And so a big part of empowerment to me is exactly that thing I kind of mentioned earlier, which is like pain tends to lead to hopelessness. And what we need to be able to offer is a solution, a strategy, right? That ultimately feels like hope. When I'm working with someone in pain, they sometimes walk in the door and they don't feel great. But part of what we've built inside of our relationship is safe space to tell me however you feel. I will listen to anything you have going on. I will do my very best to accommodate and modify and adapt and find a way for us to win. And I promise by the end of the session, you'll feel better.
Wow.
Physically, yes, but like mentally, emotionally feel better. Because a huge antidote to the poison of pain is feeling empowered, feeling like I can do something about it, feeling like there's a way forward. And that's not always eliminate my pain. Sometimes it's
Yeah.
just understand it better, understand maybe what to stop doing because it's aggravating an issue, understand what I should be doing because that's where I can make progress, right? And the reality is, none of those science tools, none of those, training strategies really mean anything if the client in front of me doesn't get that I understand,
Hmm.
that I hold space for like you're going to feel different ways on different days. And I'm with you no matter what, right? So there's this important credibility, knowledge, solution oriented thing that I have to be able to do. And then there's also just this I'm here with you.
Right, right.
Today's a bad day. It's okay. I'm so proud that you got here. Here's how we're going to change what we do today. Here's how what we do today is still going to make us have meaningful forward progress. And really I'm trying to help my clients learn how to trust themselves again. Because pain is sort of this ultimate, oh, I did something wrong. I hurt myself.
Right. Right.
And you'll have pain and it doesn't mean you did anything wrong. But what we want for you is you have some pain and you have some idea about what to do with it, including offering yourself a bit of a break, right? Understanding that pain is multifactorial, there's lots of stuff going on. And then just sort of going like, what am I willing, capable, able to do today? What's available to me today to deal with the situation so that I don't feel like a quitter, so I don't feel like I'm giving up, so I don't feel like I'm doomed, so I don't feel like, oh, every day to the grave is just going to be a little bit worse, right?
Exactly.
That I think really gets in the way for a lot of people. So we want to provide an alternate route to that.
No, I love this. It's very holistic. It's let the science be what it is, which is a tool,
Mhm.
and let the human component be what it is, which is the pathway to connection, right? And I just love that with the principle, with the science, and with the person, who not only who you are, but who they are, you're actually able to connect all of that together to bring the person to understand what pain-free actually means. So it seems like pain-free is a mindset where it's understanding where you are, what you're feeling, and what's triggering it, and also thinking about solutions, not necessarily to uh, uh, not necessarily to not keep moving, but you keep moving and you find ways to stay active, to stay healthy, all the while touching on the pain. I think that is wonderful.
Well, and I think the very reality is, I think this is kind of one of the places where, call it the fitness industry, for lack of a better term.
Hmm.
But I think this is sort of one of the areas where those of us in the profession, right, who've been called to this vocation, I think we are starting to see the benefit of a shift away from aesthetics. We're starting to see way more opportunities and a much wider definition of what a gym or what a fitness class or what that looks like.
Hmm.
I think that's really important. I think we need to do a lot more of that, right? But we're starting to see that loneliness is a huge issue with remote work and how technologically connected we can be. And we're starting to we've seen over the last decades how health has become a huge issue, right? And so lifestyle stuff along with sort of bigger societal issues. So what I like when you say the word holistic, what I think about is how I have a job to do and I'm an adult and I have stuff to do in my life that needs to be taken care of. And there's only so many hours a day. And like I said, I don't even have kids. I have less demands on my time than even the average
Right.
person. But if how I move and how I feel, like mentally, emotionally, physically, deeply, and my ability to get into community and sort of the total net positive experience around my hobbies, right? For some people, how they work out maybe could be considered one of their hobbies. The more sort of good buckets I can check with the time I spend moving, the better. So
Mhm.
connection and community and um, physical health and mental health, all of that being linked in how I spend my time exercising my body, that's really powerful, right? I don't
Yeah,
think we can spend all this time, effort, energy, and money on fitness if it doesn't check some other important boxes. And so, yeah, the more we expand beyond look better. There's nothing wrong with wanting to look good, right?
of course.
Hopefully, it comes along with also feeling great and being healthy and whatever. But the more we expand what's available, I think the more access we create, the more inclusivity we offer, right? And that's not to say that you can't go find the version of it that feels the best for you, but hopefully there's a version that feels great for more total number of people.
Totally.
Pain is one of those really unifying barriers that, we've got to have solutions for in order to get people moving.
No, for sure. I mean, so much, so many great wisdom, so many great advice, tips, and things to think about. I think just a couple more questions. I think I have. I think probably like a second to last question is a lot of people have difficulty moving in the colder months, whether it's for because they're working remotely, because of the weather, right? How what would you say helps them stay grounded and motivated through those tougher times? And like, could you use perhaps your own routine as like an example to what people could potentially do?
Totally. I would say, when I was a high level athlete, you know, we had a team practice at 6 a.m. and then we went to breakfast and then class and then, there was a workout scheduled in the afternoon and sometimes I had another practice with my goalie coach in the afternoon, right? I would say, I felt the most productive and successful when I had a really aggressively jam-packed schedule. There was no
Mhm.
time to think about whether I would do something or not. It was on the schedule. People were expecting me to be there. I had to be there.
Yeah.
When I stopped being a professional athlete, when I got into fitness, when as a trainer, I had to fit my workout in where it could fit around clients, as I have even shifted to remote work, and my day is like, wow, I've got all kinds of options. Like I have a certain amount of work to get done, and I have a whole day to decide what goes where. The less structured and scheduled my life is, the less productive and successful I feel. That's certainly been my experience. And at a certain point, I was reading, I think it's Gretchen Rubin's. She does like she's a researcher and has a cool happiness podcast, but she put a book out at one point that said like there's four types of people. You know how humans love quizzes. We do a quiz, tell me all about myself.
Yeah.
This one was really illuminating for me because basically what she was saying is there's four types of people when it comes to like getting stuff done, right?
Mhm.
Fitness is definitely a place where I think we can judge ourselves really harshly on did we do it or not? Did we meet the standard or not? And so what I found really interesting was in her book, she was like, okay, there's intrinsically motivated people. These
Yep.
are the people who make a New Year's resolution and keep it. And I was like, wow, who does that? I'm not sure I know a single human who makes a New Year's resolution and actually sees it all the way through. So that to me kind of felt like a unicorn. But that was one type of motivation. Then there were extrinsically motivated people.
Yep.
And essentially that is when an outside source has an expectation of you, you meet it, no
Yep.
problem. Your boss needs something done, you do it. You've got a team practice, you show up. There's someone waiting for you, you have an appointment, you're there. And I think that's where I kind of was like, oh my God, I'm an extrinsically motivated person. That makes sense as a team athlete, right? Show up, practice, don't let the team down, whatever. It also
Right.
makes sense why if I've got a 5 a.m. client, I'm there. I've got a 9 p.m. client, I'm there. Someone asks me for something, I can do it. My boss asks me for something, I do it, right? And so at a certain point, I realized I'm an extrinsically motivated person. So what became important was two things. One, when I get asked for something, I have to pause and think about whether saying yes or saying no is the right choice for me and the other person. If I'm
Mhm.
overextended and I say yes to something, I'm not delivering my best. I'm kind of letting that person down too.
Right.
So I had to get more disciplined maybe about what I allowed myself to say yes to. And then the other thing that kind of goes along with that is if I make some kind of external commitment, like if I work out with a friend and we're supposed to meet at a certain time, or if I sign up for a class that goes off at a certain time, or if I sign up for an event, like I did DECA earlier this year, and believe me, I had to train for that. So
What is DECA, by the way?
it's kind of like a High Rocks Spartan race,
Okay.
the Spartan race family, but it's inside
Got
at a gym. There's no running. It's just a bunch of functional zones.
Okay.
But it's tough. It's hard work. So I had to train for that for a couple of months, right? So my what works for me, right, based on my extrinsically motivated type, is kind of making a commitment to a thing, to a person, to a time, to a class. And I find I'm much more successful when I do that. So this idea where I'd love to be intrinsically motivated, and why can't I just figure it out? And why can't I just be disciplined enough? It took me a long time, but I think I finally let go of that. That's just not the type of person I am. So when I set myself up based on what I know about myself, I get to be way more successful. So maybe that's join a challenge. Maybe it's sign up for 12 classes of a new hobby. It doesn't have to be
Mhm.
fitness, right? I did ballroom dancing for a year as an example.
Nice.
But maybe when the environment gets more difficult, colder, darker, for more hours, whatever. Maybe if that resonates for you, just look for something to be accountable to in a supportive way. Because for me, anyways, the idea of letting the person or the entity down is horrible. So I'm gonna go, and then I'm there and I have a great time. So that works for me. I'll be looking for something to sign up for, early next year that keeps me steamrolling through the winter for sure.
No, for sure. I mean, that sounds really cool. I think you really hit the nail there with saying knowing who you are, how you function, and what motivates you is really a big component to kind of just staying active and just keeping yourself accountable in general for anything and everything in life. So I really love that message, and I especially love something you said earlier that kind of brings us full circle, which is help folks connect to things that they're already connected to, right? Like and help them find the bridge to physical activity. So maybe if it is something where they love being part of a challenge, right? They go running with someone else, or if they love doing some sort of activity, maybe it's wall climbing, maybe it's even if it's playing mini golf where you're just moving around, right? Like just help folks connect to that, right? I just love that message so much. In other words, have fun. Find places where you're having fun and try to connect physical activity to it. So, with that, the last question that I have is outside of movement, what fills your cup? Like, what are routines, hobbies, maybe rituals that you enjoy doing, um, kind of just on a regular day to day or every season or so?
Yeah, that's a good question. I would say I love to travel. It's the number one thing I want to do. I've got a list of countries that I haven't been to yet that I want to go
Mm-hmm.
see. And I'm always, if I have a trip somewhere on the horizon, in general I just feel better because I'm thinking about it and I'm planning things for it. So
Mm-hmm.
I am super lucky that both my athletic career and the job that I do now, I get opportunities to travel, and then I get to plan trips on my own. And I think it's really closely tied, but I also just love eating good food. So travel has these incredible opportunities to eat food that's different from where you live, and you get to experience
100%.
the culture. So honestly, thank God I like working out too, because I eat, I train, it tends to stay in balance, and I feel pretty lucky about that.
No, no, I think that's great. I mean, it sounds like you have a lot of fun and you find things that make you feel fulfilled while in the meantime staying active. So I think you've actually found the right balance, after all these years. So that's great.
Appreciate it.
No, of course. And well, with this, I really want to thank you for taking the time to come on our podcast to not only share your journey, but to also share some good wisdom and on how on what pain free actually looks like and how folks can kind of just connect. Uh, they could connect the things that they're naturally connected to movement, and also how that essentially sometimes even helps break down some of those barriers that prevent us from moving. So thank you so much for doing that.
Appreciate it. And thank you so much for having me on. I think it takes a lot of people messaging kind of what you are, which is it doesn't have to look like what you think or we're told it looks like. There's tons
Yeah.
and tons of opportunities, and sort of leaning into what's available and looking for solutions around the challenges is really key. So it's awesome just to talk to someone like you, Luigi, who's enthusiastic and,
Of course.
sharing the space and sharing the platform for just more great ideas. So
No,
thanks
of
for
course.
having me on.
No, of course, completely our pleasure. But before actually we sign off, I actually never even asked what PPSC stands for, because you're the director of education for at PPSC, right? Like,
Yeah.
tell us more
It's
about this, because I'm sure some people are gonna want to know about Logan, and what does Logan do? Where can I find Logan?
awesome. Yeah, PPSC is just the faster way of saying pain-free performance specialist certification.
Love it.
So it's just faster. I've got a course in Vancouver this weekend that I'm teaching. I'll be in Toronto first weekend of October for another course. So yeah, we have kind of a combination of live certification events that we offer. Canada, U.S., Europe. We've been doing
Beautiful.
that since 2018.
Yeah.
Um, and then there's also some great online content because we don't get to make it out to every little city and town that we'd like to. So there's some, our courses are also available online. And I gotta say, John. So my boss, John, has been working on his book for the last 3 years. It comes out October 21st. We're super excited because it's written for everybody. The courses are for trainers usually. The book is the course, but refined and polished and offered for the average person. So it's been really, really cool to be a part of that project with John. Exactly for the reason that everyone deals with pain, and we want everybody to have solutions to navigate it. So yeah, PPSC, pain-free performance specialist certification, pain-free performance.
Amazing, 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 amazing. Well, this is wonderful. Thank you so much for coming here again, and want to thank everyone for tuning into this episode with us. Again, I am Luigi from Let's Move Canada. If you want to learn more about Logan, you can follow them on Instagram at logandube.3dfit. That is LOGANDUBE.3DFIT. In addition, make sure to check out our Instagram at Let's Move Canada for latest updates, and head over to our website at letsmovecanada.com to learn more about our mission. Do not hesitate to DM us if you're interested in being a guest on the podcast, or if you have any recommendations. And stay tuned for next episode announcements, and see you guys.